Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Praetorian Guard, paren, Pacification and Control, end paren. That's right. Now, I previously did two videos, part 1 and 2, regarding the occult, occultism, our enemy. And that plays right into pacification and control. And so I'm now going to do a video on a military operation referring to the suppression of resistance against centralized authority. You'll see it typed up under the definition of resistance against the state, but there are no states, there is no governance, there is only Swiss bank authority. It expresses itself through a variety of straw dogs in the form of your sheriff, of your local police, if you have a police department, the toothless shepherd known as the FBI, and now we've added to the National Guard, we've added ICE, immigration control people who wear satanic black masks and are flak jacket, heavily armed bullies with minimal training. The Praetorian Guard typically were elite unit within the Roman army. It's over 1,000 years old, well over 1,000 years old. It goes back to before Christ, the concept of the Praetorian Guard. This was to guard the senators and the emperor of Rome and the elite, and you should know that the Praetorian Guard were 100% military operation. Exactly how our Secret Service is, for Jack Kennedy, like for Trump, like for Dwight Eisenhower, the Secret Service, they're not so secret, are they? They're really not that secret. Anyway, what you should know is that the Praetorian Guard, who guards the so-called pseudo-leaders who have little to no authority in real life, they provide military pacification and control services. They do the following things. They guard the palace, okay, first of all, and they provide bodyguard services, allegedly, and they also provide crowd control for when the emperor speaks or a senator speaks in front of a group of citizens, the profane and vulgar citizens. They want to maintain order, remember law and order, and they also provide counterintelligence to keep people in and around the movements of the emperor and the senators. They like to keep that a jealously guarded secret, so they'll float fake plans, travel plans, to throw off any potential assassins. So you should know the Praetorian Guard is schooled in counterintelligence methods. Then, paradoxically, you know that the Praetorian Guard, who's the closest to these cocktail parties and dinner parties of the senators and emperor of Rome, they collect military intelligence data as well, because there's alcohol served, and a lot of times loose lips sink ships, and there's a Praetorian Guard not far away listening to the conversations of the elite in the body politic. You should know when there is travel from here to there, village to village, protectorate to protectorate, which is what they call their strategic hamlets. They call them protectorates, with secured perimeters, with yet more Praetorian Guards in and about the secured perimeter of a township or hamlet. That travel was done with military escort services, aka Praetorian Guards were in the taxi service. They transported not only the emperor and the senators, but they also transported visitors. They were in control of the movement of visitors to and from the palace or wherever estates and chateau meeting places were booked. All right, so in summary, the Praetorian Guard is a military unit. They're skilled in use of a variety of weapon systems, and they are fully armed. They're part of the Imperial Roman Empire. They're imperial babysitters. They provide bodyguard services, counterintelligence services, crowd control, data collection of military intelligence. They also provide taxi and escort services of both visitors and the protected class body politic. All right, that's been true for well over 1,000 years. And that was for the tip of the pyramid, the tippy top, the pseudo leaders, the people that we look to for centralized authority and directives, who blurt out the commands coming from the centralized control. And it doesn't just happen in Rome, Italy. It happens throughout the world in all the colonies. The whole idea of the expansiveness of the Roman Empire with legions of soldiers well trained to take possession of other people's property and steal their farm products and their mining mineral materials and strategic port facilities throughout the world, the whole world. And that's called colonialism. On the Juxtaposition channel, we call it what it really is, which is fascism. It's like a cancer. It's a fascist. It's taking the centralized banking authority of merchant banking. That's what we call it here on the Juxtaposition channel. Merchant banking, which means you partner with corporate entities, LLCs, limited liability companies, and or structures known as corporations, which have an infinity lifetime. So you can replace the president and the vice presidents, but the entity lives on. So that would be the shippers, the people who build the ships, the people who sail the ships, the captains, the commanders, the conquistadors. These people are given financial incentives and made partners with the realm, the bank, the centralized bank authority who rules over the empire, more so than does the emperor himself. The emperor just reads speeches and attends parties. The banks pay out the money or bestow banking services for merchants who engage in the transport business of minerals, farm products, and human trafficking, including slaves that are taken back to Rome. For the games, right? Don't we have circuses, Roman circuses, to entertain the society, the profane and vulgar? They get the cheap seats, and then the elite get the box seats. I got an airplane over my head. All right, so anyway, normally when you subjugate a colonial population, you're going to breed contempt. It's an invidious situation where you are asserting your will, unwanted will, upon the others. Typically, you'd expect resentment, anger, and rage. That's what I would have expected in my strategic Hamlet when airplanes began dumping aluminum chalk over my town around Thanksgiving 2022, over 3 years ago. But that's not what happened at all. My townspeople, my neighbors, have really embraced the whole polluted atmosphere. They think it's just like normal. It's the new norm post-COVID, right? The new norm is polluted sky. Silver tailings and chemtrails and tic-tac-toe patterns and scalar telephotometry all around me, with ringing in your ears, with magnetic resonance, not to mention the LED streetlights, the smart meters, and the ring cameras, all part of neighborhood watch and monitoring the energy usage of each citizen within our prison, known as our neighborhood, our strategic Hamlet. All right, So we have an extra element here besides the physical presence of the sheriff and the police with their AR-15 rifles tucked away in the trunk of the car, with their pepper spray, with their electronic stun guns, with their 9mm Beretta or Glock semi-automatic pistols, with their menacing presence, with their bulky flak jackets, with their radios and their drones and their helicopter support. In addition to the physical presence of Praetorian guards in our own neighborhoods, we have 24/7 surveillance using the 7G equipment that's been deployed. The smart desk messagens, MIMs and MIMOs in our troposphere, our breathable airspace, breathable air column, messagens, smart desk, and the LED lights, and the street lights, and the headlights for the cars, and the ring cameras, and the smart meters, and whenever they repaint your sidewalks and or your curbs and or your crosswalks, the paint includes the nanobots that are being foisted upon you in your breathable airspace column, known as the troposphere. That's being baked into the products you buy at the hardware store, including paint. They're putting it in the paint. So like when you repaint your living room, you're actually repainting a spy surveillance system that links up with your television and your laptop computer, your tablet, your mobile phone, and your human body, your body area network, your personalized human body area network, which your physician will call the medical body area network, because your physician will have the military security clearance to hack into your body. If you sign up with a local physician, they will have permission to check out your telemetry 24/7 as part of precision medicine, also known as point of care, also known as e-pharmacy, e-neutralization, e-pacification and control. We have electronic and photonic and ultrasonic pacification and control Praetorian Guard systems fully deployed now. So you see what they did is they took how they treat the highest level of the cult. For example, in the colony called the United States, the Senate and the Supreme Court of the United States and the Trumpster and all the Trumpster's minions running around the White House, they were already controlled for the last 250 years of control since we had a fake democratic republic. George Washington was controlled, and Abraham Lincoln, don't you think he was controlled? Do you think it's possible to go shoot the president in the head at the Ford Theater unless the Praetorian Guard stood down? Typically, the Praetorian Guard, who I've met personally, I met Ronald Reagan in 1981, and I want to tell you he was surrounded by 5 Praetorian Guardsmen who were dressed like business people. They had suit and ties. And they kept a safe distance from me, and I shook Ronald Reagan's hand, and they did not interfere at all. I guess I didn't look menacing enough, huh? It was on a Saturday morning. It was around 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I was headed to the men's room. I had no idea I was going to run into Ronald Reagan, who had just won the election for fake president of the United States, you know, trouncing Jimmy Carter. But Ronald Reagan had not yet taken the oath of office, and I believe that it was in January before he was flown back to Washington, D.C. to meet with Lucio Gelli and take a gift of a Bible and, give a inaugural speech there. All right, what I wanted to tell you is that this is all pacification and control, and it goes from the top to the bottom. It just typically at the bottom you have the clueless, vulgar, profane citizens who don't know what 33 means or 13, Unity Monks Mason, or the highest level of a Masonic order, a fraternity of fraternities, a fraternity of fraternal orders, which would include the LDS Mormons and the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope and the Praetorian Guard of Swiss Grenadines who guard the Vatican City. There are 113 guards who keep the Vatican tightly secured. which includes the Bank of Vatican, which, if you didn't know, is a Swiss branch bank of UBS and Bank for International Settlements of Zurich and Basel, Switzerland. So, in other words, the Roman Catholic Church is a Swiss bank. In the exact way that the Mormon Church is too, right? In the way that Bain Capital is, in the way that Sand Hill Road bankers Kleiner Perkins are, Sequoia Capital is, Excel KKR is, Jim Breyer Capital is, Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen's Capital is, Eric Weinstein and Peter Thiel's Founders Fund is, in the way that Jerome Kohlberg and George Roberts and Henry Kravitz of KKR are. Jerome Kohlberg has passed away, but the other two knuckleheads are still around. In the way that Boston Consulting and McKinsey Consulting are. In the way that Enron was. Okay, in the way that the opera and the symphonies and all of these think tanks are. Hoover Institute, Brookings Institute, Aspen Institute, Claremont Institute, Asian Institute. Those are all potential money laundering branches of Switzerland. And they are within pacification and control of centralized bank authority over the whole world. Got it? Get it? Good. And it's a matter of not only commandeering control of the physical world, but also commandeering and commanding the metaverse, or what we call the psychological mind control, VR, virtual reality. In other words, it's not a physical, it's more of a thought police reality. And darn it if the Romans didn't conquer that too. They did it with propaganda, they did it with proclamations, they did it with posting petitions in the city squares. They had the learned teachers of the society read and repeat the proclamations and directives coming from centralized bank authority expressed through the emperor to create the illusion that the emperor is in charge and he's going to meetings. Does anyone really seriously think that Joe Biden went to meetings? Do you really think that Donald Trump goes to meetings at the Pentagon and they talk about options about the Strait of Hormuz, including Donald Trump? There is zero chance that Donald Trump is included in any military operations which are run by the Supreme Command of NATO forces in Geneva, Switzerland, in the House of Peace, and in Brussels, Belgium, the Supreme NATO Command. They have multiple, I think they have at least 5 Supreme Commanders in case one goes down. They still have 4 others. It's like the head of the Medusa. You can chop one head off, but 2 grow back. That's NATO. NATO is Swiss Army. There is no America. Every Air Force plane, every tank, every personnel carrier, every freight train, every trailer, every chassis, every container is owned by Switzerland. They own all the port facilities throughout the entire world in all their colonies. Okay? And look, it's not their first rodeo. They have practiced colonialism, most recently in Rwanda and Rhodesia and Somalia and the Congo with Patrice Lumumba. Remember him? A friend of JFK who got murdered just before JFK took his oath of office. Just a few days before Jack Kennedy took his oath of office and made his inaugural speech, his friend Patrice Lumumba was shot in the head in the Congo. Okay, and he had a Praetorian guard guarding him. Italy, France, expansion into Asia, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Spain, into Latin America and the Philippines, Cuba, sugar plantations, right? Sugar cane plantations. Them's that pick cotton are soon forgotten, right? Didn't we have that going on in the United States of America? Or the Confederacy, should we say? Jefferson Davis's Confederacy. Anyway, colonialism expresses really what the United States is, not was, is, and remains. First, we were a British colony. We had French and Dutch, and we had Spanish people in New Mexico and Arizona and California, did we not? Didn't we have Father Junipero Serra and build out military 21 missions in California? Didn't we discover gold in New Helvetia, which is Switzerland? Yes, we did. 49,000 acres of land grant to Switzerland, to Johann Sutter, who was a Swiss national. He was not an American citizen. He was a Swiss national citizen. And the Mexican government bestowed 49,000 acres, and 4 plus 9 equals 13, unity amongst Masons. So the Spanish and the Mexicans are partners with Switzerland, are they not? And it was on the 49,000 acres of mostly farmland involving the Sacramento River, the American River, the Yuba River, and the Feather River that we discovered gold on the American River in Coloma in allegedly January 1848. It is my supposition that gold was discovered at least 12 years before that, probably 13 years before that, and that the minerals were mapped and mined before the dinner bell was rang. First, they had to build out the rice fields and the orchards and the almond trees and bring in cows, cattle, milk cows, meat cows, sheep, goats. You had brought in chickens and then establish a military outpost in and around New Helvetia, which is a vast property of 49,000 acres running from Butte County, Sutter County, Yuba County, Sacramento County, Placer County. It's 5-6 counties it encompasses. El Dorado County also. So you're talking about Switzerland invading California before 1848. Actually, Johann Sutter arrived in 1839. So you could say officially the Swiss takeover of Northern California began in 1839. But I'm saying it already happened in 1776 when the Spanish built the Presidio in what was then called Yerba Buena, aka renamed San Francisco. 1776 was an official Swiss takeover using the Spanish. All right, so all the military bases have been expanded by using your sheriff's departments, which today some of their facilities are referred to as fusion centers, where the sheriff can operate warrantless searches and seizure of your emails and your text messages and the photographs you send over your phone, which are tracking devices, and they can put that into a dossier file for you for further investigation or tagging you as a domestic terrorist. Yes, that is one of the Praetorian Guard services, is to label potential assassins, aka pacification and control, subject, targets, targeted individuals, TIs, meaning people who are especially reluctant to obey or comply with centralized bank directives, centralized authority. In other words, people who resist centralized authority, right? Within a protectorate, which is a colonial colloquialism, not to mention a euphemism. Pacification control is a euphemism for central authority resistance to state power. Except I'm telling you, state, just take the word state out and insert Swiss bank authority. In other words, anything that's going to go against your bank, any person who's going to go against the bank is a domestic terrorist. To keep it real simple, just to boil it all down, to simplify that polynomial into its simplest terms, that we call, during my entire lifetime, anyone who resists is a terrorist. And you should know, if you explore terrorism throughout the world in colonial strategic hamlets, you will find that the media refers to terrorists as communists, that the people who planted bombs in the piazzas of Italy or the train stations were communists. that the people who armed the terrorists in North Rhodesia were communists, that the enemy in North Vietnam were Viet Cong communists. Okay, it's all BS. There's no such thing as a communist in real life. Only in media can you have a communist. There are fascists, but you notice how that's been deleted from the lexicon of term. No one talks about fascists, which is the only party that exists. The only cult that exists with centralized authority of banks is called fascism. You can call it imperialism, you can call it colonialism, but it's fascism. There's no democracy, there's no democratic republics, there's no socialism, there's no communism, there's no libertarianism, and there's no Buddhism. There's only fascism. Everything besides fascism is theater of the absurd. And take Jack Kennedy, for example. He was protected by his senior officer, Roy Kellerman, who sat in the passenger seat in the front right in the Ford limousine, Lincoln Continental limousine, that drove down Main Street in Dallas, turned on Houston, turned left onto Elm Street, and then parked in front of the staircase in the pergola so that Jack Kennedy could have his right eyeball blown out, leaving him the left eye of Horus. The only eye that Jack Kennedy had left was the unblinking left eye of Horus, which was brought to us in vivid color and black and white with Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather, who are employees of Columbia Broadcasting System, whose corporate icon is the left eye of Horus. CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System, has Jack Kennedy's eyeball in their global circle. Does anyone not understand Masonic signs and symbols rule our world? Do you know that Jack Kennedy was killed in a triangle? His shooters, his executioners, were kneeling at the tippy top of the triangle over Main Street from the railroad trestle. That's the 33-degree level, highest level within the Masonic pyramid, the Pyramid of Power. Do you know that there was an obelisk that sat behind Jack Kennedy's head, and to Jack's left, to Jackie Kennedy's left, there is an obelisk in Dealey Plaza? That is a chain of command, is it not? And that the street addresses of the three corner pocket buildings around the apex of the corner that Jack Kennedy was killed upon add up to 666, the mark of the beast. And Jack Kennedy had been driven past those addresses, so he had his back to the 666, which inverts it and makes it a 999, which stands for Meta Dead. Does anyone think it's a coincidence that Facebook merged with Control Labs of Manhattan, New York, and was renamed Meta? Do you think that's an accident? Do you think that executives at Facebook don't even know that Meta means dead in Hebrew? And Mark Zuckerberg's Jewish. Do you think he knows? I mean, I don't even know if he knows. I think a lot of these people like Larry Ellison and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs are clueless buffoons. I think they really are. They're like Justin Trudeau of Canada. All right, so mind control has been added to the Praetorian Guard, pacification and control. Mind control has to do with the non-physical world, right? Besides the military controlling our airports, our containerization ports, all the railroad tracks, all the railroad cars, all the airplanes, all the interstate highways, all the dirt roads, all the paved roads. Besides controlling our airspace and lower Earth orbit and all the places we put spy satellites and radio communication and communication satellites, the military controls 100% of that. And the military controls 100% of the information sent out over the internet, meaning that they censor truthful comments. They relentlessly and shamelessly censor content. And then they promote poppycock. You know, Victor Davis Hanson, Anthony Napolitano, Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, people like Michael Savage, whose real name is Weiner, John Leibowitz, who is, you know, as John Stewart. His name is Leibowitz. It's John Leibowitz. People like Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone is Oliver Silverstein. I hope you're understanding that you've been lied to in every facet of your life. Since birth, you've been lied to. The doctors have lied to you about vaccines. The doctors have been taught lies. They have the standard of care and their reimbursement code for Medicare to guide them. And if they go outside of the standard of care and Medicare reimbursable treatments, they are delicensed, defrocked, and kicked to the curb. So they don't have any choice. They have no choice. They can quit. They can become a holistic doctor, but most of them like to be paid by Medicare or private pay, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, etc., which all follow the template of Medicare, which includes Medicaid. All right, so that's all pacification and control. Our healthcare system, all our organized religions are fully infiltrated by the Praetorian Guard. 100% of Hollywood is military. 100% of all the actors who you see or hear on the radio, they are 100% under the control of Praetorian Guards. They call them art and repertoire reps and entertainment lawyers and agents. That's who controls, you know, Mel Gibson. That's who controls Arnold Screw Your Freedom Schwarzenegger. That's who controls Jesse the Body Ventura, the steroid body Ventura. That's who controls Lance Armstrong, Tom Brady. That's who controls Donald Trumpster. That's who controls Jeffrey Epstein. That's who controls all the Jeffrey Epstein replacements and cohorts. That's who runs Zorro Ranch, today known as Rancho de San Rafael. That's who runs Little St. James Island with its 13-striped Masonic temple that it has there. That's who runs the city of Dallas. That's who runs Dallas County Sheriff. That's who runs the Placer County Sheriff, Sonoma County Sheriff, San Francisco County Sheriff, Alameda County Sheriff, Contra Costa County Sheriffs. All the sheriffs throughout the whole world, all are run out of Switzerland using straw leaders and all using military equipment, flak jackets, AR-15 rifles, pepper spray, stun gun, electroshock treatments, and 9mm Beretta pistols. And so you have a situation here, folks, where it's 100% militarized. Your church, your bank, your politicians, your Hollywood singers and actors and stage performers, they're all under the Praetorian Guard within the fraternal structure of NATO forces. The only thing missing is the blue helmets, and most of the people you know don't wear uniforms. Sharon Tate's father didn't wear a uniform, and he was a colonel in the United States Army. Ronald Reagan didn't wear a uniform, and he was an officer in the United States Army Airborne. And neither did Bill Colby William Colby wore business suits as director of CIA, but he was in Army Airborne just like Ronald Reagan was. You see, when they don't wear a uniform, it throws you. The Viet Cong didn't wear uniforms. Only the NVA did, the North Vietnamese Army. They wore uniforms, but most of the fighting was done using farmers in plain clothes who were called communist Viet Cong, commie sympathizers. But it's all a acting, theater, casting show where you have wardrobe and strategic hamlets and scheduled events like the My Lai massacre, for example. All right, so, and the Gulf of Tonkin incident for another example of theater of the absurd in Vietnam, so that you could conduct experiments using Monsanto and U.S. Rubber and Lockheed and Brown and Root, building bridges and dams and roads and water systems and creating Agroville, and then the Cords program, and then later Operation Phoenix, kidnapping, terrorism, interrogation, and murder programs in Vietnam. We have that in America. That all is operating in America. Don't make me say Stephanie Bryan, John Benet Ramsey, Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Nicole Brown Simpson. She's the eldest daughter of a military colonel. Lou Brown is military colonel in the United States Army Airborne. Not different than Ronald Reagan or William Colby. Not that different than John Ramsey, who's in the Navy. You have Navy and Army officers. Like Ron DeSantis, for an example, or Bob Woodward for yet another example of United States Navy criminality. Bob Woodward, Ron DeSantis, Jack Kennedy was Navy intelligence, also PT-109, it's a spy boat. All right, I hope you understood today's video. I just want you to know that pacification and control is both a vertical program, like the obelisk, the power of the pyramid, and it's also a horizontal program involving all our farmlands, our rivers, dams, canals, our railroad tracks, our interstate highways, our dirt roads, our paved roads, our troposphere, breathable airspace, and then above that, low Earth orbit and space using communication satellites and spy satellites that we have integrated in every direction in the third dimensional, heading into the fourth and fifth dimension. So there's no such thing as communism. There's no such thing as socialism. What there is fascism and then military mind control games, which are theater. That's why they call it theater, right? They call it the Pacific theater, the European theater. They're not joking around. They're talking about planned, in a conference room, conspiracies where they're going to kill people in secret. Then they deploy, Napoleon or George Patton, right? Or Robert E. Lee or Ulysses S. Grant or William Tecumseh Sherman or General Joe Hooker, which is where prostitutes got their name hookers, from Joe Hooker from Sonoma County, where I'm from. True story. All right, take care. Do like and share my videos, become a paid member, and we're going to do a follow-up video on pacification control with some of my Star Chamber cohorts. So look forward to that. Take care now. Bye-bye.